Often confused for Iowa, the Gem State is often remembered more for its starchy agriculture. But what if the Potato State was harding? But what if the Potato State was hiding a much darker... God, I literally am not able to read my own words. But what if the Potato State... But what if the Potato State was hiding much darker, much deeper secrets? That sounds like something worth talking about. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scary Stories We Tell. I am one of your hosts, Chris Stashew.
Oh, oops. Was I supposed to talk?
No, I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I
thought that pause was a tad bit longer, and I was like, oh shit, did I miss something?
Well, go ahead.
Did I miss a cue?
Go for it. If you want to do it, go ahead.
No. You go.
Go for it. Go do the intro. Go for it. Really. Go for it.
I forget what the intro is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scary Stories.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Jess Byer. I hope you didn't forget that.
All right.
Go ahead.
Welcome back to another episode of Scary Stories We Tell. It's Jess Byer. Wow. One of your co-hosts back from the dead.
Like Lazarus, you have returned.
Uh-huh. And joined by me, who never left and has always been here, is my good friend, the host with the most amount of podcasts.
Is that true?
Chris Stashew. That I know, like personally. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there with more than you, but you have a lot.
It's like, I think the number's like 10 at this point.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It is a lot.
I mean, granted, you don't host them all by yourself, but still.
No, that is fair. I think I only host on my own. It's 2, soon to be, but 2 for now, which is more than enough, frankly. But speaking of things that are various in quantity, we're getting back to something we have not done in quite some time, Jess. What would that
need
be?
A map.
Right.
A map of these grand old United States, because we are going back to our spooky states, weird states, crime states, whatever you want to call them.
Haunted states. I don't know. I mean, again, it's not necessarily haunting stuff.
Exactly. Weird adjacent things.
Yeah.
States.
Spooky, weird stuff happening in our country.
The most middle of nowhere of the country as we can. And no offense to Idaho.
But it's not really, that's the thing. Like, that's the thing.
But
like, Idaho's not
you never hear about it.
Well, that's the thing.
It's not. No, it's not the middle of the country.
It's like that's the crazy thing. That's why I mentioned in the intro, like, people get it confused with Iowa. Because Idaho is the state that Washington State is next to.
Right.
And Washington State is on the West Coast. So I would contend I'm probably more in the middle of nowhere, literally in the butthole.
Yes, more than likely. Yeah. In Nebraska.
Yeah, but to be fair, though, I guess similarly to Ohio, similarly to most states, once you get out of the major cities, it's all just country anyways.
Rural, yeah.
Yeah. Ohio's that way, Texas is that way, Nebraska is that way. Everywhere is like that, but I don't think that there are a lot of people in Idaho. Not the way that there are in...
It seems to be a very small state.
Well, again, like, population-wise, it's only, I want to say it's only like 1.8 million, which is not much. It's 38th in the country. It's,
right.
It has 83,000 square miles. It's the 14th largest state in the country. So, again, it's this weird thing where you have these kind of states, I would say... North and west of us, there's kind of these patch of states like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota that are some of the least populous states in the country. And they're all kind of in this one little square area. So, again, they all kind of run together. Unfortunately, like you said, they're Washington and Oregon stand out, but that's because they're on the coast and everybody knows Portland and Seattle. But when you ask someone like Idaho, they may say Boise.
Yeah, that's fair.
They may say Boise, but like...
And I mean, I've never been to Idaho. I have no idea. It can be a very lively state. I've been to plenty of places where I was very surprised where...
I would say I love Iowa. Iowa's great. Speaking of places that Idaho gets confused for, Iowa's great. I will say...
Damn I-states.
I will say kind of my perception of Idaho is a state with a lot of people who... Well, not a lot of people, but it is home to people that are like preppers. Like doomsday preppers, because one of the big things that happened in Idaho, obviously, is Ruby Ridge, which was,
Yes.
a big deal with people who are kind of in that world of, living off the grid, preparing for the end times possibly, but more or less wanting to be left alone. US government comes in, kills the guy's wife. It's all real bad.
Yeah.
It's all real bad. Wife and child die, dog dies. It's real bad. But that's what I think of when I think of Idaho. No, mine's not Ruby Ridge at all. It's just I want to do an episode on Ruby Ridge. I want to do 3 episodes. I want to do an episode on Ruby Ridge, then I want to do an episode on Waco, and then I want to do an episode on the Oklahoma City bombing, because that's kind of the logical progression of those 3 events.
Right.
But when I think of Idaho, I literally think of Ruby Ridge, which is unfortunate because, again, it's like, well, what do you think of when you think of Dallas? Not everybody is going to say the same thing that I believe your husband would say, which is JFK getting shot in the head. You know, some people would have a different answer. And I think for a lot of people of a certain age, Idaho is where Ruby Ridge took place. Essentially, if you were like probably growing up, if you were in your teens in the 90s, like teens or olders in the early 90s when Ruby Ridge happened, I would think that that might be your point of reference for Idaho, other than the potatoes. Potatoes. It's called the Gem State and the Potato State. So,
do we have any potato stories?
No potatoes.
Any haunted potatoes?
I don't have any potato stories.
Find any either.
I was going to say, I don't have any, but I don't know what you have. So, Jess, since it has been quite some time since we have done this, I'm going to cede the floor to you and give you the opportunity to tell to tell your story, and then we can talk about it.
All right. Well, get out your true crime bingo cards, because we've got some black widows, some dead husbands, and some poisonings going on. So yeah, I did not, like I said, find any haunted potatoes, but I did find a case of a woman named Lida Southard, aka Lida Ann May Trueblood.
I actually was kind of surprised.
3 other names as well.
I do want to mention, though, I think we should both mention, we're not going to talk about the big Idaho case on this episode, which is the Lori Vallow case, which is like
that's an episode.
I guess that's actually, I want to retract what I said. I think anybody now may know Idaho if you're in the true crime world because of that case.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Apocalypse zombie mom, I guess is what, I don't know what they're calling
Again,
it.
preppers.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, so continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but when I honestly thought that's what you were going to say was the case. And I was
we do get out in that, like special area of the coast, and the cult worlds become a little more real. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, for sure. So
but
go ahead.
We have Lida Southard, who is allegedly a black widow, married 7 times, leaving 4 dead husbands. Well, 4 dead people behind. A couple of them were husbands.
Oh, wow.
So basically it's like a 57% risk to your life to marry this lady, because not everybody ended up dead, but
Interesting. That's very un-Black Widow-esque in a lot of ways.
Right? Exactly. So there's some interesting thoughts behind this case. So in 1915, 2 men, Robert Dooley, who was married to Lida Southard, and Edward Dooley, his brother, her brother-in-law, and their daughter, there being Robert and Lida's daughter, Lorraine Dooley, all died unexpectedly, all within 1 year of each other. So the first to go was Lorraine, their daughter, who became ill and died suddenly, which, according to Lida, when she was questioned, she said that her daughter got sick from drinking from a dirty well. Now, I mean, it's 1915. That is really not out of the realm of possibility.
You said 1915,
but kind of a weird 15. Yes, 1915.
What would that be, like dysentery?
Probably, yeah, something like that. Just
whatever you
some
get
kind of
from
parasite, whatever.
Yeah, drinking dirty water, right?
Right. So the next to go was Edward Dooley, which was her brother-in-law, whose death was actually ruled a poisoning. And it's 1 second. Let me get my pronunciation correct for this. Oh man, it's hard to say. Basically, Robert Dooley fell ill and died effectively of what they said was typhoid fever, being attributed to something he consumed. Again, Not sure that that's how typhoid fever.
I was gonna say, I don't think you can get typhoid from.
No, but that was in October. So right after that, Lida and her husband basically were the sole survivors of the family until, hold on a second. Let's rewind here because I realized I was reading my notes confusedly. All right. So I'm just going to pick it back up with Edward Dooley, the brother-in-law.
Go for it.
So yeah, the after the result of quote unquote dirty well water killing the daughter,
which is again, I think is believable, right?
Right. It is. It's totally believable.
Until we get to the next part, where all of a sudden believability gets thrown out the window.
Well, maybe, but reading notes matters. But Edward Dooley, the brother-in-law, died basically about 2 months after the daughter died, and his cause of death was ruled a ptomaine poisoning.
Okay.
Which effectively does the same thing as arsenic, but it's found in like food. So if you consume too much of said food, I don't think it's found in potatoes, but that would be hilarious.
Sure. But again, it was another food-based poisoning.
Right. So again, something consumed killed this person. So finally, leaving only Robert and Lida married together. Robert actually subsequently fell ill and died of what they diagnosed as typhoid fever. So there's some interesting circumstance here because a lot of this actually can't fully be proved, and some of it does feel like it could have been a reality. But in 1917, after Lida inherited the, everything from her husband.
But did she also inherit everything from her husband's brother-in-law as well?
I think they all just lived together. Okay. I don't know.
So she's like the last. She's the last woman standing.
Yes. She is the sole survivor of the family. So in 1917, 2 years later, she goes on and marries William G. McCaffell. And during this time, they had a 3-year-old daughter who suddenly fell ill and died. This they didn't have an answer for. Could have been SIDS, could have been poisoning, could have been a lot of things.
Sure.
So they moved to Montana, which is in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. It's one state over.
Yep. And McCaffell falls ill, her husband, suspected to be influenza. In 1918, a few months later, he dies, and the official cause listed is diphtheria.
Interesting.
Of course, she claims the life insurance policy yet again.
Well, you're not going to not claim life insurance if your spouse dies. I'm kidding. Again, it's suspicious because of the poisonings, not because of life insurance.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. In 1919, she marries Harlan C. Lewis, who is an automobile salesman from Billings, Montana. And within 4 months of their marriage, 4 months, Lewis falls ill and dies of complication from gastroenteritis.
That's a
which we'll say is poisoning.
That's a lower GI. That's a lower GI thing. Yeah. Gastroenteritis is like, I think that's almost like from what I have read, gastroenteritis is almost kind of like it's like a catch-all term for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It's not, like
basically your intestines are fucked.
Yeah, I think there's just like something about your intestines that's not working. But again, like I think from what I have read, like I said, gastroenteritis is something that like 60% of American adults deal with. I don't think it's like a permanent thing, which is like weird to hear that it like could kill
someone
you.
Could die of it. Yeah. Well, I mean, in 1917, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, a small breeze could kill you.
I don't think people really understand how unsanitary American food was in the mid-1900s.
Oh, God. How unsanitary anything was.
Right. Like,
anywhere.
Yeah, there's a show on the History Channel called The Food That Made America, and it, really kind of goes into, like Upton Sinclair writing The Jungle.
Right, yeah.
He writes that because of the conditions of the meatpacking industry in Chicago. But the thing to remember, obviously, is, like, it's way worse than that. It's, like, everything. It's not just the meat packing. Right. It's like the flour that you're getting may be sawdust and shit. Like the milk that you're getting may have chemicals in it to keep it white. Like all kinds of really like terrible things.
Lead paint and all that shit.
Yeah, like
breathing in fumes.
Exactly. Like this is the age of lead paint. Like this is the age
Industrial
of
revolution, baby.
this is the age of smoking cigarettes and thinking they're healthy. Like not knowing.
They're like, this is great for me.
Yeah, like it's for your health. It keeps you thin. It also, it could kill you.
Right,
Nobody
exactly.
knows that. Exactly. It's really funny to me though, because again, I think in this day and age, in our current medical climate, I'm just curious, like before we get on with with the story, how many people could you kill in this day and age with food poisoning and get away with it? It's like zero, right?
Probably not very many, because like I got food poisoning from a restaurant around here a few years ago.
That was around Thanksgiving of 2020.
Yeah,
or 2019.
Exactly. 2019, yeah, 2019. And I called the health department, and health departments didn't exist really back then either. But yeah, they went in and figured it out. But
not at all.
But with food poisoning, probably not. I mean, like slow poisoning, like arsenic and shit like that. Yeah.
I feel like that's harder to get away with though, because
people are looking for it constantly now.
Well, isn't that the other thing? I mean, they talk about
it's hard to be a Black Widow these days.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like with Rasputin, right? Because that's always the story with Rasputin, is that he would like microdose himself with arsenic or maybe not arsenic, but it was definitely an organic poison. He would dose himself with it every day to build up an immunity in his system to it should someone poison him. And like again,
and they did.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I just wonder how easy it is to get away with poisoning someone in 2022 through food as the vehicle.
Well, if you watch Investigation Discovery's Deadly Women, you'll see that it's very easy. Yeah, well, actually, I guess not to get away with it, because they don't get away with it.
See what I mean? See what I mean? Like, I think in this day and age, you can't get away with it. It might be one of the things you can't get away with.
Our science and everything has evolved, and
it's too good. It's too good.
It's a lot more pinpointed than it used to be. Well, it's like, they died of a stomach disease.
You can't get away with poisoning people anymore. Like, you really can't. Like, look at what has happened.
Hey, the Russians do it all the time.
That's what I was about to say. Look at what they don't even. But again, they don't get away with it.
No,
we hear about it. And yeah, but that's. I think my point is, like, now in this day and age, like if you think about like the safeguards that people have, both safeguards from the government, but personal safeguards, like myself, I don't eat a lot of animal protein just by choice. I just don't. Like, it's not something that like I won't go out of my way to cook it, but I will eat it at restaurants. I still like barbecue. I still like eating steak, but for me, it's just a choice. But there are people who have dietary restrictions that are health-based, so they know what is and isn't supposed to be in their system. And in this day and age, when everything is so clean, if something shows up in your system when you're dead that's not supposed to be there, they're like, okay, you were poisoned. Like, there you go, right?
People are much more inclined to go to the doctor, too, and be like, I don't feel right. Rather than just being like, my stomach's messed up. It's fine.
Something's wrong with me, Ma. Give me that lavender root or whatever fucking poultice that they would be making.
Give me some cocaine for my allergies.
Right. Yeah. Hey, Coca-Cola made with cocaine. I mean, it's
exactly
the Coca in cola. So I just wonder, because like this story, you're already at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people now that have been poisoned. Like
6.
Okay, this woman would not...
I mean, one of them was diagnosed with typhoid fever.
Sure, so. Okay, so 5, right? 5, maybe 6.
Yeah.
What number today could she get to is my question. It's like 1, if that.
Probably 1, yeah. Like, well, and if she started out with a kid too, that's it.
Oh my God, poisoning a child? Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. They're like,
the fact that one of the people that's poisoned in the beginning of the story is a child...
The first one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, even if it wasn't the first one, the fact that it's in the first, like, 1 or 2 is just, kind of mind-blowing in a way. Different.
And see, there's really nothing about her before this, because really, why would there be,
right.
then?
Yeah.
But, so either the situation is either the first person she killed was her child, and then she just got away with some things over the years.
Yeah.
So, getting on to our last deceased husband. In 1920, she marries Edward F. Meyer, who is a ranch foreman in Pocatello, Idaho, which is how we get to Idaho.
Back to Idaho.
Yep. He actually also mysteriously falls ill of typhoid fever and dies September 7th, 1920. So now she's had 2 husbands who have died of typhoid fever within about 5 years of each other.
And typhoid fever is common, right? At this time.
I was just about to say, I believe it is. Yes. I don't know how common, but
well, let's using the evidence that we have in front of us, it would seem
unless they were murdered.
Well, my point is, it was common enough that nobody
for them to be like,
typhoid
for them
fever.
To be like, oh, probably typhoid, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and your other husband died of typhoid. Okay, okay, believable. Like if it doesn't draw their suspicion, then it shouldn't draw ours. Again, like some of this stuff is, like you already mentioned, some of this stuff you really have to look at it context sensitive.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, how do we get into when people actually start to give a shit about the fact that all of this is happening around her? So let's rewind a little bit. Turns out she was not the only last remaining member of the Dooley family. There is another Dooley, a Twin Falls chemist by the name of Earl Dooley, who was a relative of her first husband, began to study the deaths surrounding her after he heard tell of other things happening.
Oh my God. What are the odds this dude is a chemist?
Right?
What are the odds? It's like,
what are the odds? In 1915, between 1915 and 1920.
Oh, he just happens to be a chemist. Like, what the worst possible job for someone to have.
He, of course, discovers that Ed and Bob Dooley from our first original murder were murdered with arsenic. So,
what was the belief at the time? What killed them?
For Ed, it was hold on. For Ed, it was ruled a ptomaine poisoning.
Right, so like
which is like a food-based thing,
organic compound. Okay,
right. And for Bob, it was typhoid fever.
Okay,
but no,
so you must be able.
It was actually arsenic.
You must be able to convince somebody that arsenic poisoning is. There must be something about arsenic poisoning that would.
I mean, I would assume that it works like anything that destroys your body, and that it's automatic. Like your body's automatically going to like form a fever to fight against whatever's happening to it.
Okay, sure.
So I guess they're probably just like, it's a fever. It's typhoid fever.
And I don't think arsenic kills you immediately. It must. It's a slow thing. Yeah, right. That's why people tend to do it. Black widows tend to do it over a course of time because it becomes less apparent than if someone just is like drops dead the next day. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And there is poison. So, there is poison like that.
There is obviously like lye and shit like that. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know what is it that they put that those like the agents were having in their teeth? Potassium cyanide. That's what it is.
Yeah, where you just crunch it and it's like that's it.
Yeah, that's because that's what in the fucking James Bond movie. He's like potassium cyanide. It's like his whole face melted off. Yeah. I think arsenic and cyanide, people get them confused because arsenic is like the
they like associate
drug
with the same thing, yeah.
Right. Theatrical poisonings, I guess.
So after Earl finds this information out, he obviously involves the police. So a Twin Falls County prosecutor by the name of Frank Stephen begins an investigation and starts exhuming the bodies of all three of Lyda Keller's husbands and her 4-year-old daughter, as well as her brother-in-law, because let's also not forget that there's a dead baby here too.
Right. Well, again, like that, like you said, that would be the thing that would stop everybody in their tracks in this day and age.
Right. So Frank Stephen discovers that some of the bodies contained traces of arsenic, while others were suspected of arsenic poison by how well their bodies were preserved, and found her motive in the records of the Idaho State Life Insurance Company of Boise. All 4 of Keller's husbands had held a life insurance policy where they listed her as the beneficiary. Okay. Keller was able to collect over $7,000 over the years from the deaths of her first 3 husbands. That was the first 3. There are 2 other husbands, Ed Meyer, Paul Van Southard, whom she also got insurance money from. A good 10 grand from each of them. But at least Paul Southard, was divorced. So she got money from him in a divorce. But Ed Meyer was, I believe, the car salesman that's Harlan. Ed Meyer was the ranch foreman in Idaho, and he is the one that mysteriously also fell ill of typhoid fever. But turns out it was arsenic poisoning. And she got a whopping 10 grand for that guy. So 1920, 10 grand.
That's So
That's some Gatsby money right there.
$7,000, the amount that she
From
got.
the first three.
That is equivalent to today of purchasing power of $200,000.
Holy shit.
So that's like,
yeah, and then
that's the thing,
add
like
10 grand onto that.
Right, which is essentially
Plus
just
inflation.
call it another 10, or another,
Right.
just call them both 10. So she probably got like $400,000 in modern day money from killing all these
within like
people.
about 5 years.
What's like, again, what's really crazy is like the amount of time between them is so small.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like, I mean, but you gotta think, like, back then, like, a woman was supposed to be married, right? So your husband dies, you better find a new one.
That's fair.
Husband dies, better find a new one.
That's very fair.
But still, yeah, like killing them all that fast, plus the kids too. That's pretty bold. But so eventually she was captured. She was found by law enforcement in Hawaii, married for the 5th time to a Navy Petty Officer Paul Southard. She was extradited to Idaho, where she was arraigned on June 11th, 1921. But things don't end there. So her trial lasted 6 weeks. She was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 10 years to life imprisonment at Old Idaho State Penitentiary. I'm not sure if that penitentiary is still around, but if it is, there we are. In 1931, so 10 years after she was arraigned, May 4th, she escapes prison and takes up residence in Denver, Colorado as a housekeeper for Harry Whitlock, who she would later marry in March 1932. Whitlock eventually figured shit out and assisted in her arrest in Topeka, Kansas on July 31st, 1932. She was eventually released on probation in October 1941 and pardoned in 1942. She died February 5th, 1958 in Salt Lake City, Utah of a heart attack, and is buried in the Sunset Memorial Park in Twin Falls.
So why was she pardoned?
I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. I have just a bunch of question marks next to it because I tried to figure it out. I don't know like what possibly could have made them do that unless they were like, maybe it wasn't poisoning after all, but I'm pretty sure it was. Pretty obvious that it was.
So here's the other question. So they exhumed all the bodies, but they didn't exhume the body of the child.
No, they did. They exhumed the body of her 4-year-old daughter. They did not exhume the body of the infant.
Okay.
Because probably, I mean, you probably not a lot to take away from an infant skeleton.
She killed an infant and a 4-year-old, and she poisoned both of them.
And 4 men. And she got pardoned in 1942 and died in 1958. So I don't know how old she was.
She lived a rather full life, this woman.
Yeah, she sure did. She escaped from prison.
What's crazy is she escaped. I think what's crazy is she escaped from prison and then went back to prison and then was paroled.
Right.
She was paroled and then she was paroled and then she was pardoned. I mean, again, here's the thing though. Like, I would contend, as I'm sure you would,
right,
she was clearly only a danger to someone she married.
Yes. Well, and only about 57% of the time, because there are ones that didn't die. They just got divorced.
Right. But the thing is, she's not going out and like robbing people and killing people and enticing people in to turn them into soap. She's only killing people because there is, again, something in financial gain, but it's clearly not constant financial gain because, like you said, she doesn't kill all of them.
Right. So maybe she blew through some money she was fine and had money when she married one of them, and then the next one she's like, "Fuck, I'm out of money. Well, bye."
And you're telling me that there's no information about her being like in debt or needing the money or nothing? Not really. Like that?
Nope. Yeah, she's there. So she was born in 1892 in Cadesville, Missouri. And there's really not much about her. It says her early life, she was born October 16th, 1892, 60 miles northeast of Kansas City in the central flatlands of Missouri. And that's all it says about her.
Interesting. Wow.
So yeah, there's really, she was like a ghost up until she was not. She did plead not guilty in the court, but she was convicted of using arsenic anyway. But
pled guilty by way of
she pled not guilty
by way of what? Insanity?
No, she said she didn't do it. That they weren't poisoned. That they all died
so she
of
just
whatever.
Said, wow. Okay.
Yeah. that they all died of typhoid fever and dirty well water and diphtheria and all these other.
What do you think?
I think she killed him. I do. I think that maybe the little girl, maybe that was like a dirty well water type thing.
Youngest,
the 4-year-old.
Okay.
The 4-year-old. And then maybe both kids, honestly. Seems like I could see her just being like a kid killer.
There's no
kid killer.
There's no financial
a husband
gain.
killer.
Yeah, I was
exactly.
There's no financial gain to killing.
Because there's a difference,
kids.
Right? Like, because like
that's what I was saying. Like, she seems like a threat to only people in her immediate vicinity.
Right. So I think that it is very possible, given the time period, that the little girl could have gotten sick from drinking bad water. And I think, babies, unfortunately, SIDS is a thing, sudden infant death syndrome, if you're not familiar with what that means. But it is a thing. So I could see that. And yeah, I see her being strictly a Black Widow killer, meaning that she probably viewed these marriages very much as a business contract. And let's be honest, the guys probably did too back then. I mean, most of the time they were kind of like that. Not a whole lot of marriages of wholehearted love going on.
you're my property type things.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, like she probably didn't really have any emotional pull for these people or for these guys, for her husbands. But money's money. Especially then, when everybody, that was at the height of capitalism being born, like industrial revolution, bring it on. Yeah.
Well, and like we said, $7,000 might not seem like much today, but
no, but when you think about that time,
it's an inconceivable amount of money for someone like herself to clearly just come into, I think, too. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
She's like, all of a sudden she has all this money, like,
right. And so
just makes you wonder, what was she doing with it? Like, what was the point? Like what
did you do?
Like, well, at some point, when is enough enough? Like, that's so much.
She moved all over hell.
Right. Well, that's my point. Like, she's the motivation here is strange to me.
Yeah. She's very, very mysterious. And I do find that very intriguing about her. Her other nickname, aside from the Black Widow, how original, is Flypaper Lyta. So I think flypaper, I think I heard this at one point, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I believe back in the day, flypaper used to use arsenic in it.
Oh, I just assumed it was like she would catch people.
Or Black Widow, yeah.
I think it's like just stupider version of the spider, right? It's like, she's like, you have to wonder at some point if this is being financially motivated.
Right.
At some point, you have enough.
Yeah. Especially back then.
More. Yeah, that's my point. Like, how much of that money could be spent in a lifetime?
When she ended up in Hawaii.
Yeah, but your lifetime expectancy at this time of kind of existence is probably 50 to 60 years.
Yeah, probably something like that.
So she
was 66 when she died, I think. So yeah,
I just don't know.
Yeah, she did a lot in her later life, but there is nothing about her earlier life. And my only guess as to why she had, could maybe have been pardoned into this, that, and maybe they, looking back at it, were like, well, maybe it wasn't poisoning, but I think it was, at least for the husbands.
Oh, yeah.
I will say that I have doubt for the kids, but
the husbands. It's like Bill Cosby, right?
It's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah.
How many husbands are you going to have that die? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, how many times do husbands have to die? Yeah.
If you're 22 and you marry, an 80-year-old every 5 years or whatever, fine. I get that. But these guys were probably around her age, and just drop dead out of nowhere.
Yeah, like literally out of nowhere. I think for me with stories like this, I think I always just think about, like I said, like, why keep doing it? Because at some point she could have just gotten away with it.
Right.
At some point
she's a very mysterious, fascinating lady.
At some point it's just like, you don't have to do anything else. Like, you've got enough.
Hey,
you have enough money. Why do anything else?
She's not the serial killer that serial kills because of the usual reasons. It's maybe she was a spy.
Again, it's just poisoning deaths are so wild because it's such a, I don't know. I don't understand
It is a very intentional crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a very plotted one because it can take time.
Yeah, like, poisoning for me is so premeditated, right? Like, it's like hyper premeditated.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a
Like,
pure
versus,
accident, which does happen from time to time.
like,
Places
oh no, I accidentally poured bleach in your
that
whatever.
happened at an Alamo Draft
Yeah.
House in Omaha. They had like, you worked at a restaurant, so you know they like clean the stuff behind the
Right,
bar
yeah.
with like line cleaner. They had line
Right.
cleaner behind the bar in like a fucking vodka bottle, and somebody was like making a drink for people and made the drink with the line cleaner, which is like a fucking it's the line. We had it at the place I used to work at. It's so caustic that it's kept in a container with like skull and crossbones and shit on it, and it's like you have to use like, you fill like a bucket with a gallon of water, and it's like a thimble full. And this fucking guy made 2 drinks, and when the ladies drank it like burned their like
them, yeah.
It almost killed them.
Jesus Christ.
But you see what I mean? Like that kind of poisoning, it's an accident, but it's still poisoning.
Kind of poison, yeah, exactly. But the slow, like arsenic poisoning, things like that, those are the very hyper premeditated murders. Like, I am doing this. I know this is going to take time, months, even potentially a year, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah. I think there was I remember this episode of one of those like really hyper 90s true crime shows. I wish I could remember, again, because I didn't know your story ahead of time, so I couldn't prepare to find this story, but I will figure the story out and bring it back. There was a woman, I remember this episode so distinct, and if my mom is listening to this, she'll be like, I know exactly what he's about to talk about. There's an episode of the show where this woman poisoned her husband, the same way we're talking about here, where it was like slow dosing him, but I think she was dosing him with like fish food or something that was like for fish. And it was poisonous to people.
Was it that stuff to, the fish cleaner?
It might
be.
The
tank cleaner shit that people were injecting themselves with?
Yeah. I don't know what it was, but it was something to do with fish, and she was like poisoning him. And so he went to the hospital. And so he didn't eat the hospital food. She would bring him food from home that she was poisoning. Well, bringing it to him in the hospital, and he was like, "Not." They were like,
"I can't understand why you're not getting better."
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. That is exactly what happened. They were like, "I don't understand. He's not getting better."
Food that we didn't make.
Right, exactly. And they found, and that was, I think that when somebody, like, I think someone was like looking at the food and like smelled it, and they were like, "Oh, that smells weird."
Right, yeah.
It smells like poison, maybe.
It smells like fish food. It's strange.
I think the guy ended up surviving because his wife, they ended up like, stopping her.
Figuring it out, yeah.
Yeah, but like, again, I just don't like poisoning anymore. Yeah, like you said, like, I think to begin with, poisoning is very premeditated, but in this day and age, like, you don't just have these things that can kill you that quickly by accident. They've made it impossible for people to have access to those things for reasons.
Right. And if you do have access to them and someone finds out that you had access to them and someone died that's related to you, well, good luck.
Yeah, it's like in all those it's like in a lot of those like true crime stories where it's like, I don't know if these are real stories, it's more like fictional, where it's like they're looking for a serial killer, and it's like they had access to this chemical, so maybe they're like a doctor or something, because only doctors have access to these kinds of things. Like you said, if you have access to it, you're fucked if they find out. Like, you're totally toast. Yeah. Accidental
if you watch that last season of Dexter, that new season of Dexter.
Well, yeah, they have that whole thing in Dexter, right? With poisoning people. So yeah, it's not an accident. It's not an accident.
That is my Black Widow story, with some mystery, some intrigue, but never without the life insurance.
Yeah, God. And they just looked at how much money she got, and they were like, "Well, there's your motive right there, boys."
There it is.
Clear as fucking day.
And that is what they cited the motive being, is that there was motive being that she was the sole beneficiary.
I mean, that's so much money. Can you imagine if you did that today, they'd be like, "Yeah, you're fucking doing this." Like, not even a question. Who's benefiting here?
Especially with the way life insurance policies are now. Like, it's not like $7,000. It's like $100,000.
Yeah, especially if it's like a really special coverage or something. It's like, even, like, God, millions. It depends on the person. Like $1 million even. Like, Jesus Christ. Not to mention, in this day and age, like, that's the other thing that time you don't really, like, it's kind of hard to comprehend. When you killed someone then, like, what did you get of theirs? Like, now there's like
property.
But like now there's like many things to be had. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like there's assets, there's investments, there's physical things, there's But before it would have just been, it's like land, property.
Yeah, like I think anymore, like killing,
Money.
like unless you're killing
Gold.
someone for like reasons of like pure malice, like, but I don't think you murder people anymore for their money unless you're like married to them or benefiting from their death directly. Like you rob someone's house, you can't. Most people don't have their money in a way that can just be like taken out of the house physically.
Yeah, it's all in like liquid assets. It's not a like hard cash, hidden under the mattress type thing.
Unless you're Tony Soprano, you're not keeping duffel bags of money anywhere in your
And in which case, if you are Tony Soprano and someone is breaking into your house, they are either the stupidest person on earth or you are fucked.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, there's not even a point to keeping money in duffel bags because everybody knows money in duffel bags gets no interest. So there's also that. But my story is a complete 180 pivot from true crime because, well, I mean, here's the thing. We never tell each other what we're going to pick. We just kind of both...
We just hope that we don't pick the same thing.
Yeah, we use like some sort of mind.
Thankfully, there's enough
control
information out there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I also think it's weird. It's one of those. It's almost like game theory. It's like, well, I have to assume you're thinking a certain way, and that's how I pick my things.
Right.
And you assume I'm thinking a certain way. Well, it's as you do anything, right? Like we're trying to outthink one another, but think in the same direction. So I picked something that is a cryptid. What a surprise! Which is why you didn't pick a cryptid because Chris with the cryptids. What a fucking shock. But yeah, no, a cryptid, and you'll appreciate this one. So I'm bringing the Emma energy on this episode because my creature is not it's not dangerous. It doesn't hurt anybody, and one might even contend his name's not spelled correct. So.
But he's too polite to say anything about it?
Yeah, so in Payette Lake, which is in Valley County, Idaho, which is named for Francois Payette, a French-Canadian trapper. Francois, what a great name.
Francois.
So in Payette Lake in Idaho, there is a creature, a possible plesiosaur-esque creature.
Ooh.
Whose name comes from a contest in the 1950s, a contest that was held nationally to name the creature. The creature was named by someone named Leslie Hennifer Turry of Springfield, Virginia, and it is in reference to a Jack Pearl TV and radio show at the time, based on a character that Pearl played, who was Baron Munchausen, and so. Apparently, at some point in the show, there is a character named Charlie, who's the straight man to Baron von Munchausen. And I guess von Munchausen was asked by Charlie, he was asked a question, and then Baron von Munchausen would say, well, was you dare, Charlie? But when he said Charlie, it came out like, Charlie? So the creature in the lake, in Payette Lake in Idaho, is named Charlie. Sharlie. Charlie. Can you believe that?
Charlie the lake monster.
Yeah. Can you believe that nonsense? I couldn't believe it. When I read it, I was like, this is where this, again.
Charlie, they had a contest for it. This is how just nothing was happening, folks. Like,
again, it just goes to show that people, even in the 50s, are using pop culture references to kind of shape.
I mean,
it's funny. I'm thoroughly amused. So Charlie is the renamed version of the creature. He was originally called, and you'll like this is an even better name, Slimy Slim. Slimy Slim.
That name.
That is like that. See, that's the funny thing. Like when I read that name, I laughed out loud because that name couldn't be funnier if it tried.
Right.
Slimy Slim. Yeah, Slimy Slim.
I'm going to name a side character or something that.
Yeah, Slimy Slim. So that was 1944. They came up with the name Slimy Slim. So that's the interesting part. He's been cited several times, and he was actually, you can believe this. This was something that I was really excited to find out. So as recently as 2019, he was cited. This creature was cited. Yeah. So in 2019, Chris Hopkins and Karen Giardina were sitting on a log watching their dog swim in Payette Lake when all of a sudden they noticed 2 to 3 humps rising in the water from the north end of the lake. For about 200 yards, they saw humps coming in and out.
Wow.
And again, this is the lake where...
Man, I don't know what I would do. Like, if I actually saw, like, evidence of a lake monster, I'd be like, oh...
Well, that's the thing. I mean, again, to be fair, I'm not too scared of lake monsters, only for the fact that the part, and Maggie and I talked about this on our Lost Tapes episode. Things in the water are only scary when you're in the water, unless it can come onto land.
Well, yeah, like alligators and crocodiles and hippos. And...
Right. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, stuff like that is scary, but a shark can't come onto land.
I'd be afraid. I don't know that I'd be afraid, but I think I would just be like, so like, oh my, like I'm seeing potential evidence of a cryptid.
Sure. Well, and I'm 100.
I am completely just blown away.
I'm 100% with you. And that for me is kind of the bigger thing. It's like, if I were to ever see one of these, I think my jaw would hit the floor.
Right.
Because
like,
so Charlie is described, he's described as 35 feet long with a dinosaur type head. Again, kind of expectation here. A pronounced jaw, humps like a camel, and shell-like skin. So I interpret shell-like skin to be scales.
Yeah, like a crocodile or an alligator where they're kind of shimmery.
Yeah, so what's interesting about Charlie is versus something like Loch Ness Monster. The images that are around for Charlie, there's a book written in 2007 called Charlie by Linda Johnson that has some amazing artwork. It is a nonfiction book that is meant to kind of take what is, again, a possible non-existing creature and give it a real backstory. And it's amazing artwork. You should check it out if you've never seen it. But he looks more like a water dragon. Less like the Loch Ness Monster.
Plesiosaurus.
Right. So the Loch Ness Monster, what would be for you like the defining characteristic of the Loch Ness Monster?
Like the long neck.
Right. For like
long neck, like the back of it's like hump, and then,
right, but just like
the flappy fins.
But just like one hump, right?
Yeah, not multiple.
Multiple, I think, in my mind, kind of connotates something that is kind of like long and kind of is undulating in on itself like a snake. So yeah, this looks more like a water snake dragon. Like it looks like a water dragon, but the dragon source of inspiration is Chinese. Does that make sense? Where it's kind of those long, slender,
long
bodies.
And thin. Yeah,
so
I can see that.
That's kind of what he's perceived to be, I guess.
And if we come from like the skeptic side of things, if the Loch Ness Monster and Charlie and Champ and all the other myriad of lake monsters that are allegedly swimming around these parts, the likelihood of them being some kind of like unknown like crocodile or alligator type creature is probably the most likely.
Right.
And also still equally terrifying.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, like to say, oh, well, like you said, to go at it completely as these, we have to figure out a way to make something that exists already into this. Like, an alligator or crocodile but again, like in Boise, I didn't get the sense, because that's the other thing. You get the sense when it's something in an area with those kind of animals, you get the sense that they've already kind of ruled those out.
Right.
Right. And I didn't see anything here saying that alligators or crocodiles. I don't think, because crocodiles.
I don't think those are native to.
No, alligators are the ones that have to live
freshwater.
Right. And crocodiles are the ones that it could be so this would have to be an alligator then, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. If this is a freshwater lake, it would be an alligator type situation. Which makes sense. I mean, they are very long animals. I mean, so are crocodiles. I mean, they do get up to like 6 to 8 feet long.
Yeah. I don't know. Just
are very blendy into the water. But no, I mean, like an undiscovered species of something. Could be, monstrous looking. Like, I mean, alligators and regular alligators and crocodiles are pretty fucking weird to look at. Like, if you really think about what they are, sharks too.
Right.
Like,
giant reptiles.
Those are dinosaurs that are still walking around.
Exactly. So there is the other theory. One of the prevailing theories is, and again, it hasn't happened recently, and it couldn't have happened recently. This would have had to have been something that happened before the river was dammed. The Snake River, yes, the one that Evel Knievel tried to jump over.
Tried.
Yeah, tried being the key phrase. So a sturgeon would have to have moved from Snake River into Payette Lake before it was dammed.
Right.
And sturgeon can get to 8 feet long. They can weigh over 300 pounds, and they can live for 50 years. So,
wow.
And they're a migratory species. So there is that. It could be a sturgeon that's trapped in Payette Lake, and it being trapped in Payette Lake, it's going to die at some point. Maybe there are other ones there. Maybe it's the only one there. Who knows? But I will say, and
well,
again,
that's the thing too.
Go ahead.
Like about things that die in the water, like that are native to the water. Fish go belly up, but not everything does.
Right. Exactly. No, exactly.
So like the heavier things don't necessarily go belly up. So it could still be that, like, you know, whatever the Loch Ness monster is or was, if it's, you know, not with us anymore, eventually might just find some really cool ass skeleton, you know,
right.
Fossil skeleton at the bottom of the loch.
Well, and that's always the kind of, that's everybody's like way of looking. That's a lot of skeptics' way of looking at it, right? It's like, well, why don't they, that's what they always say, like, why don't they find Bigfoot bones? And it's like, you do know that, like, that's not
things
that
die in the
easy.
woods all the time.
You never find anything. And also, like,
they get eaten by other things.
If something dies in the woods, if you make the assumption that if something dropped dead,
if nobody's there to see it, are they still alive?
Right. If something drops dead in the woods, not buried, mind you,
right,
it's going to decompose, and things are going to come by and take things with it.
Right.
Move. I mean, you look at something like the Titanic, right?
Snow,
like,
and
right. Yeah. Look at something like the Titanic. Like, fish and things were dragging stuff from the Titanic hundreds of yards away from it.
Right.
Like, moving things. To me, it's like that. Why don't they find the bones? And it's like, oh, well, why haven't
also,
we
if you
found
think about, like,
El Dorado? It's like, why haven't we, like, it?
Right.
You're asking for impossibilities when it's like, why haven't we found the bones? Like, because we don't find bones of things as it is, like you said there, because people can go missing.
People go missing. Yeah, we don't find people.
Human beings can go missing. That's why we're not finding Bigfoot bones. Jesus Christ.
And I mean, yeah, if you're like underwater, I mean, you're underwater. Shit's gonna float away. Like,
and underwater, there will be agitation of the bottom soil, and there will be things that cover it up and push it around. Unlike possibly on the land where things could just theoretically not be
leave it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, like, that's
more
the thing.
than likely a coyote or something is going to wander by and be like, "Ooh, let me see this arm."
Yeah. You bury bodies 6 feet underground, not because
for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So that the body isn't dug up by a goddamn, wild dog or boar or cat or whatever.
Or gravedigger.
Yeah, or exactly. Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, again, you make it, a big pain in the ass. But I that like argument to me is like, again, I don't have to sit here and have like quantitative evidence to dispute that. It's just like, think about it logically and rationally for a moment.
Like, there are things in the ocean that we don't know exist. And I realize, I'm talking about the ocean at this point, but we have not explored every small or large or medium-sized body of water even close in this country, let alone on this world.
No, then there's for most bodies of water, there is absolutely no reason to go spelunking in them.
No. And the thing about water too, like you said, like it can change, like its population can change. Things are migratory, dams get built, blockages happen, things dry up, things flood.
Yeah,
it can move. Things end up somewhere where they didn't initially start because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Something that we talked about on an episode of Lost Tapes was the White River Monster, which was believed to be a manatee that had swam upstream into Arkansas. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And again, like, could that be what Charlie is, a giant sturgeon? Well, there's one other thing I want to ask you about, and it's part of this story, but it's part of a lot of these stories, and I kind of wonder, because I couldn't find much information kind of leading into this part, but I could just find the kind of like the basic, I've read this a million times. So what I have read a million times is Native American people in the area had a story about a thing, an evil spirit in the lake. My question to you is twofold. A, is that used as a quantifier for something? And should it be a quantifier? And two, how much credence do we put into those kinds of things when people say, like, the Native Americans? It's like, it feels like it just keeps showing up, and I don't know how much stock to give it anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Right. You know, like Wendigos and things like that. Like, I mean, you know, I
or even Bigfoot. Like,
I can't remember what I watched. I can't remember where I heard this or watched it or read it or whatever. But it was basically somebody who's indigenous in this part of the world saying that while Native American legends, spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them, are really only dangerous to the Native Americans themselves because of the strong belief in them that keep them around. But to white man, you know, to white people, to people of other cultures, they don't, like, Native Americans are like, no, it's not going to pose a danger to you because it's not in your culture. It's not in your, you know, your spiritualism. It's not in any of that.
Okay.
So I can see it kind of being, you know, I believe that people from specific tribes believe in certain legends, like wholeheartedly 100% believe flesh and blood? Yes, I do. I think that a lot of our cryptids and urban legends are just morphed from stories and legends of the indigenous people that, you know.
Sure, Bigfoot's one of
settlers picked up and just like morphed into their own cautionary tales for whatever reason. Because ultimately, and we've talked about this before, you know, cryptids, urban legends, myths all exist as sort of cautionary tales to people in a generalized, fantastical way.
Or they're creation, or they're just used to explain something.
Or creation myths. Or creation myths, universe myth, you know, like.
Right, or explaining something that just can't be explained. Like, I'm like, where does the coyote, like, where, I think one of the things is like, why does the coyote laugh? Is like one of, you know, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that if anything, the stories of Charlie and the stories of the demon in the lake are more than likely probably very intertwined and born of the same thing.
A belief which that is ultimately there is just something like that.
There is something in the lake.
So maybe that's what Charlie is. Maybe he's he's the manifestation of the white man's belief in the indigenous people's belief in an evil spirit of the lake. But that's, come on.
I mean, what fun is that? I believe that white people actually have that innate, like, magical sense of the universe? No, I don't. I don't believe we have it. I think we blocked it out of our lives a long time ago, unfortunately.
I think we can and do at times reconnect with it. And I think if you try hard enough and you put enough effort into it, you can reconnect.
Right. But which I think a lot of people are doing now.
Yeah, but I would agree.
We can talk about manifesting all we like. That's a big thing.
But to be fair, I think to your point, more than likely most people are not, which is, you know, perfectly fine. But do I think Charlie exists? You know, look, he's been sighted in 1920 by a group of loggers who saw a log bopping up and down weirdly, and then it went away. Sighted again in 1944 when people are kind of giving this, you know, explanation of, you know, why it looks the way that it does with its shell-like skin and its humps and its dinosaur head. But I will say humps in a lake could be anything.
I mean, man, yeah, I grew up on lakes. I lived in the, you know, lake area of where I grew up, and we were out fishing and stuff all the time. And yeah, there are things floating in the lake that from a distance look like things that are much scarier than they actually are. Right. Most of the time it's a weird stick or a log or a blue heron on a weird stick on a log.
Right. Just far in the distance watching you.
Something dead, and something dead floating around, you know, like fish and other animals and stuff floating around in the lake, and then trash, you know, all kinds of stuff. And I think that in a place like this where, you know, is it a logging? It sounds like it was kind of a logging area. Probably more than likely at least half of those sightings were a log.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, like when the first, and that's why I kind of waited to tell the log part of the story until the very end, because again, it's when you frame it with the first time it was seen and documented was 1920 with a bunch of loggers, it all of a sudden takes the entire, it's like, oh, you saw a log bounce
up and down, and then you lost track of the log. What, in the sea of 50 other logs going down the same river?
Exactly.
Like, it's
and like I said, that's my point, is if you lead with that, it's much less interesting.
right.
Yeah. It's a fucking log, and it's a log.
But I do love that almost every state has a Loch Ness monster type thing.
We're finding that
Like
out
any
very
place,
quickly.
I mean, look, we haven't even gone to Minnesota yet, the land of lakes.
No. We haven't,
according to the butter.
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, I guess the other one is Champ is the one. Is Champ in Michigan? Like Champlain or
remember. Lake Champlain. Is that New York?
I don't know. I don't know this country.
The lake monster. The lake monster is Vermont.
Oh,
so
wow.
Shared by New York and Vermont.
Okay.
So I think in the X-Files episode about it, they are in New York, part of it.
So that's our Loch Ness, right?
Unless you want to believe in Lake Erie, my lake, the Lake Erie monster, which we have no, it's Bessie.
Oh, right. Okay.
The northeastern Ohio and Michigan area claim to have a Lake Erie monster. We actually have a hockey team called the Lake Erie Monsters.
Interesting.
So yes, I do not at all believe in Bessie. And if Bessie is alive, good on her for being able to survive in Lake Erie, because that lake is disgusting.
Is that the one that lit on fire?
Yes. Twice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, ain't nothing living in that lake. I don't think.
No, I mean, you want to see things floating around? I mean, shit, you find people floating around.
Yeah. What's floating in Lake Erie? Things you don't want to comprehend.
People whose cement shoes came off. That's who.
Yeah, also fair. Yeah, again, I will say, I know that if you listen to this show, you know that I have a love of cryptids. I kind of always look for an opportunity to bring them up. But I think for me, water cryptids are probably like, if we're talking tier system,
right.
water cryptids, I think for me are just like, I'm not inherently interested.
Right. See, I am very interested in them, but I tend to not believe that they are actually cryptids, and that they are more just either an undiscovered species, an old species, or a mixed,
misidentified species.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Or and that's the other thing, like a lot of the things in the water too are just like a bigger version of this.
Yes, exactly.
Like a kraken is just a big octopus.
Yeah,
like
a squid.
And there already are big squids. It's just a bigger squid. Like,
right, yeah, it's like a Godzilla-sized squid.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like an 80-foot squid, which is still terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, a big squid is already scary. Like, it's got a mouth the size of, like, a basketball. It could chomp your fucking head off in one bite. But no, it's got to be, 3,000 feet long or whatever whatever version of the Kraken you kind of buy into. So,
yeah.
I don't know. The only water monster that I'm really interested in is Cthulhu. But yeah, exactly. Like, really, I'm such a heel. It's so obvious, isn't it?
I would love, but arguably that's the most terrifying one.
Yeah, but Cthulhu is not scary because he's in the water. That's the world-ending one. Yeah, but he's not scary because
he's scary because he's everywhere.
Him being in the Cthulhu being in the water has nothing to do with Cthulhu. That's just where he sleeps.
That's just where he lives, man.
Yeah. He sleeps in the deepest, darkest depths of the water. Okay.
Right.
But like him being in the water is not like Loch Ness, where it's like he's in the loch. Like he's just,
and you are fucked if you're stuck there.
Yeah, exactly. Like Cthulhu's just like no. You're fucked in general.
Oh yeah, if Cthulhu comes out of the water, that's when it becomes scary.
Yeah,
he's perfectly safe in the water.
Yeah, because that's where he's sleeping for hundreds of thousands of years. So
right. And I think Ogopogo is British Columbia, right?
Yeah, I think so. Ogopogo, that's a great one.
Ogopogo.
But yeah, what about that Idaho? Idaho's there's only 2 stories.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what your search was like, but I really didn't find a whole lot of like in-depth stuff. I saw a lot of like small little urban legends and things like that, but not real, like mostly just blurbs. Things that you can sum up in about 2 minutes, but. Also, not too much true crime either. So I guess go you, Idaho.
other than the Valos and their
yes,
murderous ways. I will say the thing that I found, and I wanted to just kind of just bring it up as we bring this episode to a close, is the Idaho isn't real conspiracy.
I saw that too.
Right,
yeah.
which is the, you don't know anyone from Idaho, you've never met anyone from Idaho, you don't know anyone who knows anyone from Idaho, you've never been to Idaho, so does Idaho actually exist? And that actually comes from the Bielefeld conspiracy, which was a German town that in the 90s they were saying that about. So, and it also ties into the
we should do
birds exist is that same kind of idiotic line of thinking.
We should do an episode on does this actually exist theories.
Right. They're kind of insane.
I think that could be fun. Yeah, and like,
but Idaho is one of
reality.
Them.
Yep, so. Idaho is one of them, and I mean it's true. I don't know anyone from Idaho. I've never met anyone from Idaho. I've never been to Idaho. I get potatoes, and sometimes they say Idaho on them. Well,
that's
on the
where
bag.
They serve them from Five Guys. At Five Guys, they're all Idaho potatoes.
Oh, Idaho potato. Hey, man, those seasoned fries are good.
No, Five Guys is good.
Those seasoned fries are yum.
It's just real expensive.
Oh my God, it's so fucking stupidly expensive.
Yeah, it's like $30 for two people for 2 burgers and fries. Get out.
Right.
Get out with your
one order of
expensive.
Fries.
Yeah, one order of fries is enough for 2 people.
A la carte fucking burger places piss me off.
I'm with you. Right?
I'm like, just give me the fucking fries. They're cheap as fuck. You throw away a bunch of them every day, every shift. Just give me fucking free all you can eat fries.
You have Swenson's though, so
yes, true. We do.
Swenson's. Yeah. You get those. You don't even get fries there. You get those zingers or potato.
I get
poppers. Yeah. Amyl nitrates. They have those at that place, huh? Get your poppers down at your burgers, huh? This was fun. It's been a long time. Yeah. It's fun. Idaho, huh?
How many states do we have left? We really, like I said, we really need a map.
I think a lot, like 4 or 5, I think is what we've done. So minus that.
I think so, like 40 some states left.
Yeah, and we haven't even really done any of the like super duper big ones yet. So we've done like we've done like known states, but not like, I don't know,
New York or California.
Yeah,
or
we haven't done like the really big ones yet. So Texas, I think. Didn't we do Texas?
No, I don't. Did we? We did Ohio and Nebraska.
Right.
Idaho.
Florida.
Idaho.
I think that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So there you go. So we've got a long way to go. So I guess. Until next time,
figure out where we will be in this world, like Carmen Sandiego.
Where can people find you, Jess, until next time?
You can still find me on Instagram at writer Jess Byard. That's the best place. You can find me on my website, Writer Jess Byard. That needs updated terribly, but pretty much everything I do goes to or is filtered through Instagram. What about you, Chris?
cstashu.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree. Go there for the things that you would want to hear that I also work on that isn't this, which is a fair amount of things for those of you that care. For those of you that don't.
Well, I guess I did just make a beacon today, which is like a link tree, I guess.
Beacon.
So Beacon, yes. So you can find me on Beacon at Jess Byard. And everything that I do is linked there.
There you go. Link by Beacon. I'll have to check that one out.
Beacon.
Linktree wasn't good enough for you, huh?
It wasn't. I like the way it looks. It's more customizable.
Oh, that's fair. Okay. Well, see, that does sound more appealing because Linktree was rather.
It's ugly. You can't do it. Like it's all like here's your flat ass color.
Utilitarian. That's what they would call it. Yeah. So that's where you can go. Big thanks as always to Maggie the Odd and Dustin Rutledge for the album artwork. You can find Maggie on Instagram. Just search Maggie the Odd. And to our good friend Alex Malnek of Blondo, you can search him on Spotify. Just search Blondo. And as always, big thanks to our good friend Mr. Tim White, who does the outro for the show. And we'll let him do that outro right now.
No mystery is closed to an open mind.